Good afternoon and welcome back to the first broadcast of the year for 101 Sports Webcast. I'm Matt Holzapfel.
And I'm Andrew Vendelis. We have a fantastic show for you today, filled with faces both old and new. But first, Matt and I step into the batter's box for the three strikes.
The Royals defeated the Indians 4-3 to snap Cleveland's historic 22-game winning streak. It was the longest in American League history and some argue longest in MLB history. The 1916 New York Giants hold the record for the longest in league history with 26 wins straight. But they did it with a tie in between. They won 12 games, tied a game, then won 14 more. Andrew, should the Indian streak be considered the longest streak ever in Major League Baseball?
Absolutely, and I know we go back to the 1916 Giants, but they did tie a game, so as we mentioned, that should not count in my opinion. The longest consecutive streak should definitely go to the Cleveland Indians, no doubt.
Yeah, I agree. What happened was in 1916, the Giants-Pirates, they played 1-1. It was the top of the ninth. Torrential rain, darkness, they called it, ended up not playing it again. They just made it a tie. And so what we're talking about is not most streak without a loss. We're talking about most wins consecutively, and that's where the Indians should have it.
Exactly, and I think a tie should not count as a win. It doesn't. No team won, therefore it's not a win. If we're going by that logic, the Indians still have a 24-game win streak because they just won their last two. So in my opinion, I think the Indians should absolutely be considered the longest.
And also the fact that we're talking about the Giants streak 101 years later is taking away from the Indians' accomplishments because they earned that. 22 straight should be acknowledged, recognized, celebrated, and instead we're talking about why it's not the longest.
Exactly, and you're talking about a streak that, a streak that's 100 years old, and it's about time it got broken because this is a fantastic team making a fantastic run, and we'll probably see them in October again.
Yeah, and even the senator from Indiana wrote a letter to Commissioner Rob Manfred saying, we understand that this is legacy, this is history, but this is a winning streak we're talking about. Why don't we, kind of acknowledge that the Giants were a little bit too late, and then we'll go with the Indian streak.
Exactly, out with the old and in with the new. The summer 2017 transfer window was arguably the most action-packed in the world, with superstars like Neymar, Ousmane Dembele, and Kylian Mbappe all leaving their clubs with fees over $100 million. The massive amounts of money that goes into these young players should not be overlooked. Matt, do you think that paying so much for players under 25 is a massive risk for the future of world football?
Absolutely not. And the word massive risk is where I kind of draw the line because it's obviously risk reward. When you sign anyone to that much money, it's a risk. But especially when they're that young, like Neymar is under 25, they all are. But the fact that they're so young means they're the future of football, in Europe and across the world because they have so much potential, they have so much time left in their career that it's worth putting all that money to them because they could bring you so much, wins in the future.
Exactly,
success.
And when you look at the age 25, I mean, obviously for other sports like football and basketball, it's like a little bit up there. But when you're 25 years old, you're arguably in the prime of your career. We see Ronaldo, we see Messi, we see Neymar now. And we see all these young players at the ripe age of 25 looking to make even more moves. It's the same thing as just buying them out and signing them to a long-term deal.
And I think where this comes from is the fact that we see more and more people these days, like even Christian Pulisic for Borussia Dortmund and the U.S. men's national team, who's not even 20 years old yet. They're coming into the spotlight. So we're starting to think of 25 as too old and over the hill, which is absolutely ridiculous.
Absolutely.
Because 25 is still the prime of your career, like you mentioned. Maybe around 30, that's, especially in soccer, that might be going towards twilight of your career, but 25, absolutely not.
Yeah, and it's the same thing as like making them a franchise player, and Neymar, absolutely a franchise player, along with all the other players that are being signed for these big deals.
Absolutely. After Clemson's emphatic victory over Louisville last Saturday, Heisman candidate Lamar Jackson suffered a major setback in his pursuit of the momentous trophy despite his terrific play in the game. Even though Jackson has had a great season so far, Andrew, do you think should the team's record influence the player's claim for the Heisman Trophy?
Well, I thought long about this one, but absolutely not. The Heisman, when you look back at it, is about a player's individual impact. I mean, you think back to Troy Smith for Ohio State. I mean, he had a fantastic performance, and it is the pinnacle of what your season is as a player. And while some go on to do great things in the NFL or the pros, some just have that moment of glory, as we know at the Heismans. And I think Lamar Jackson, despite Louisville's slump in a way, should definitely still be in the running.
I agree. Obviously, he's still in the running. He's still, in my opinion, the best player in college football. But I think when we're looking at their records, we're taking into account who they're playing, strength of schedule, how the overall team performs. Does he make his team better? Obviously, the loss to Clemson, he can't play defense and offense, when he did in high school. But you have to look at a record, and I think that loss, honestly, is, attributed to him because he still did, at least decent. and it shows they're playing great teams. When he put up 550 yards and 6 touchdowns against UNC, a team that is obviously not in the top tier of college football, but has a great defense, that was impressive.
Exactly. When you go to that and you see that performance, you have to give him credit for that, even in defeat.
Exactly.
Well, that's 3 strikes, and I'm out. But when we come back, Matt sits down with 2 of our new NFL experts to talk about the opening 2 weeks of the season.